welcome back to PA Truck Up. I'm your host Manny, and today we have Dane Miller. We've kind of been talking in the lobby, but I did want to start opening this podcast by telling you something I've already told you. But at the start of every year, I kind of have this guest list and who I want to have on each year, um, and then right next to it, I have the whales that I want to get for that year, and that's the people that, truthfully, I think I have no business speaking to. I always reach out and try and get them on. But yeah, you've been on that list, so I really do appreciate you for coming on.
Yeah, I'm
For
excited to be
anyone,
here, and I'll say, I think it's important to realize that everybody is you're willing, you're capable of speaking to anybody, and I think that's an important thing that I think everybody should learn, and I think that's something that I even struggle with. But I also wanted to point out, I like the idea of even just setting up the list of people. It's like a really good lesson just for strength and conditioning, just for life. Is like, yo, these are my goals. This is where I want to be, and let's see if I can get it done or not.
that's one of my very first lessons in sport. Was I was going up for national trials. One of my coaches, it was so simple, but he said, "Shy boys don't get sweets. Like, you're going up for trials, shy boys don't get sweets. So if you want it, it's there for the taking. So you just have to go for it."
Yeah, 100%.
So that's kind of like how I apply, like, my goal setting is I want to shoot for the moon, because even if I don't get to the moon, I'll somewhat get close enough to to make stuff happen. But for anyone who doesn't know, if you give us a little introduction on who you are, what you do, and how you got to where you are. Have you ever wondered how I'm able to run my business, my podcast, and still be able to coach? Well, I use Team Builder. Team Builder is an all in one coaching software that reduces the amount of time that we spend on the back end of programming, on our Google Sheets, on our Excels, and allows me more freedom to do testing. With this podcast and episodes, I'm actually able to run some programs that I learned through different coaches coming on. To find out how you can use Team Builder and how it can apply to your own program, visit the link in the description and catch yourself a 30-day free trial. Just simply use code PACHOCUP, that's PACHALQUP, and start the next stage of your coaching career.
So my name's Dane Miller. I own a strength and conditioning gym in southeastern Pennsylvania, outside of a city known as Reading. And um, what we do is we train athletes anywhere from the ages of 8 to 60 plus years old, and we have focus on weightlifting and football, wrestling, swimming, all of these different sports. And then on top of that, our big goal is to reach as much and as many people in the world of sports performance as possible through our YouTube channel and through our strength training app, Peak Strength. So what we try to do is we take what we do on site, and then we communicate those methods through YouTube, and then externally as much as possible. And I want to become known as one of the greatest strength coaches on the planet. That's my big time goal.
I love that. And I think that's going back to, again, what sets most coaches apart or most people apart, is that goal setting and seeing yourself more than just, okay, I'm just a strength coach. No, I want to be the greatest strength coach. And I think there's a lot of coaches with that. And again, success is determined by the individual. How do you
Mm-hmm.
see, like, in your ideal frame of mind, how is that achieved?
Actually, so for me, success is like, man, that's so interesting because even when I was just saying that, I when first went to my first world championships, and this was, I coached somebody to the 2015 world champs in track and field, and I've coached somebody at the world championships in athletics or the world championships in weightlifting every single year since 2017. I've been to every single one, and I remember going to the first one in 17 that I actually went to. It was in London, and I got a couple of pictures. I'm sitting there. I'm like, dude, I can't believe I'm coaching at a world championships. And to me, that's success. That's success. Like, I don't care what level you're at, that's successful. I think it's important to recognize that success is being able to pull as an athlete. Like, if you have an athlete, it's being able to pull as much as you can out of that athlete without having a negative impact on them, but instead leaving this huge positive impact. And so to me, that's like really important to use as like that North Star, right? As like, I want to make this athlete as good as I possibly can in this specific sport based off their strength training. But then for my ego, I also think And I think it's okay to acknowledge that there's some ego driven things. Yeah, my initial goal for success was to coach at the Olympics. And then when I got to Tokyo and I was in the village, I'm like, okay, I made it here. This is awesome. Then the next step when I was there, I want to coach somebody to make the Olympic final. And then I got Sam Mattis made the Olympic final that year. And it was like, okay, the next step, I want to go back to the Olympics and I want to coach an Olympic medalist. And this past year in Paris, we went back to the Olympics. We had 5 athletes that made it. Alex Rose was an Olympic finalist, but now I'm like, okay, I think in my mind currently. So to answer your question, outside of that, like guiding North Star with the athletes, um, for me, it's like it comes back to getting an Olympic medal, possibly. But then at the same time, being able to teach as many people as possible what we do. And I was thinking about this actually, ironically, this morning. Last year, I was a track coach for a CYO, so Catholic Youth League. Sixth grade kids, seventh grade kids were coming and learning from me. And at the same time, I was coaching Jaime Perez, who had just thrown the furthest in discus that anyone had thrown since 1986. So I think it's important for me to see at those levels that we can impact people in different sports
Mm,
and have a lot of success, and also recognize that success is never ending. It's like I want to strive towards this in the realm of where I'm a sport coach, which is throwing. But then at the same time, this weekend we have the NCAAs for wrestling, and I have 9 guys that are wrestling there. And then I also have, I have a guy that is likely going to be a number 1 draft pick next year, the top 30 draft pick in the NFL. And I think that it's important for me to also see those those accomplishments as contributing to my success as well. And I think for me, success is really, yes, there's like destination points, but it's still like this never ending cycle. And that really is where I tend to, I think I can get lost in this what's
mhm,
next, but I
mhm.
also think that it's something that like pulls me through and keeps me motivated.
Yeah, I think that's a brilliant way of putting it because once you get to it, like people can get stagnant, and that's exactly what they do for the rest of their life. But measuring it and constantly moving the goalposts is
Hmm.
great, what success comes from. Because like it would be easy for me to be a strength coach, and then that's it. But then we never really tap into that uncomfortableness that makes us grow even further. And I think constantly having that, but again, like what you said, kind of sounds like you also live in the present, and you're like, actually, I've got athletes that I've gotten 8 athletes to states, or I've got that NFL prospect, or still being able to be like, okay, this is still what's happening right there and then.
Hmm.
Um, I also know that you're very much athlete centric, and you kind of spend a lot of time building that culture, building the coach to athlete relationship. How's that sort of progressed through your programs over the years?
So I think that for me, it's like when I'm thinking like, on YouTube or on our app or on Instagram, right? Like I could be the coach who maybe just occasionally I meet with another high profile person, and then we work through something and we get eyeballs on our content, and they watch, and they maybe people learn a little bit. But like I personally really value the experience of coaching. Like I genuinely like being in the gym and coaching regularly, which can also be a downfall financially. Uh, but it's really fun and it's what I like. And I
Mhm.
think that initially, that's a passion of me, is like I'm extraordinarily passionate about coaching and the interpersonal relationships and experiencing the growth that people have. And because that's something I'm passionate about, I've thought about this a lot with culture and how we develop the relationships. And for us, we use trust, we use expectations, accountability, and
Mhm.
support. And so we look at those 4 areas and we say, look, I want to have some sense of trust, and I want the athletes to have some sense of trust in us. And I want the athletes to know the expectations. How frequently are they coming into the gym? What are they going to be doing? How are we, what are we expecting from them effort wise? Accountability, what's going to happen if they don't do what we wanted them to do? What's going to happen if they do what we wanted them to do? And I think that the accountability aspect is like the glue of like the abstract fun things you want to talk about, and then it's like, I like this saying, rubber to the road. It's like, all right, now you actually have to do it. And then off of that would be support. And support is like, what are they going to get from the coach? What are they going to get from being here? Something as simple as, we have a sauna, we have, protein that you can buy, we have mobility routines. That's the support. And then to continue with this is like where I see culture rooted in trust, expectations, accountability, and support. I also think that there's actually lifts that feed into support. And then when we lay out our training and we lay out our system, we have assessment periods where we'll have max outs, we'll have testing, and that contributes to the culture. We even use exercises that I think that people who don't use weightlifting variations or weightlifting derivatives actually lose a leg in culture, because kids learn how to support one another. They learn how to execute things with technique, and technique is really what is going to separate someone who has a lot of strength from someone who has a lot of strength and technique. The person with a lot of strength and technique will separate themselves because they understand logical aggression and technical aggression. And so we value movements like that because of what it does for the culture, also what it does for them physically. So culture to me is a very layered thing, where there's like the day-to-day aspect, but which is where we would see accountability and support, but then it's also like that top down sort
Mm.
of abstract fun thing to talk about with trust and expectations. But it's also something that when you are constantly in the gym and you're constantly giving forth as much effort as possible, that to me is what it is like, kids know here that when they come into the gym, I'm here, and they know if I'm not here, I'm with another athlete. Like, that's just the way it is, and that's where the culture comes from.
You said something really interesting just now, and it's lift that builds support. Can you sort of take us through how that is implemented and what kind of lifts that you feel build a support system for your athletes?
Physically or mentally?
Oh, I'd like to know physical first and then mentally. I'll
Okay,
write
so
it down.
for us, we lay out our lifts in, we would call them foundational exercises. So if we have specific sports, we separate our sports into what we term sport depths, and so we're looking at five essential different types of sports. From somebody who's like a shot putter or a power lifter, a weightlifter, all the way across the spectrum, all the way to somebody who would be more of like a marathon runner or triathlete, or cross country skier. It's very endurance based. So we have this spectrum of five different sports, and then we identify, okay, these are the assessments that we'll use, that are three main assessments, three secondary assessments, and out of those assessments are going to be your primary foundational exercises. And so most sports that we've seen, foundational exercises that lead to this physical support, that if you get good at a front squat, you're going to be a pretty good friggin' athlete. If you learn how to do a clean properly or a snatch properly, one of those two lifts, you're going to be a pretty damn good athlete. You don't have to clean. You don't have to. You don't have to snatch. You don't have to. But if I take athlete one, and it's athlete 1A and athlete 1B, it's the same person, and they go through their life, and the one life they don't snatch and the other life they do snatch, I would make the argument the life where they snatch, they would be a little bit better. um a bit better probably, but I would say, the
Sounds
foundational
super.
movements for us would be those, and then a back squat or a front squat, a single leg squat, a pull up, and a bench. Those would be like literally what you would see every single time that we are doing a workout. Those are the foundational exercises that we would be doing on a regular basis. And we can see that in our testing, that when a front squat or a clean or a snatch or a back squat or a single leg squat, or something like that, when they go up, when those exercises go up, we'll see a direct correlation to a vertical jump, we'll see a direct correlation to a 10, we'll see a direct correlation to a shuttle. So those are the main foundational exercises physically that we see.
How about mentally?
Okay, so this is where I think the culture in my term of technical aggression is like, we've all been doing a bench press, right, where we might see a bench press and we just feel it get out of position, and it might drop a
Mm.
little bit low and we miss the lift, right? So it's very apparent on a simple slow movement like a bench press, that technique can have a very large impact on the physical result. And so if we can learn from this mental, from a little bit more deep focused work, and everybody who's like anti weightlifting, they'll use these buzzwords like deep work. Yeah, we got to do deep work, blah blah blah. But then they don't want to actually do deep work when you're
Hmm.
learning how to
Hmm.
lift. And there's actually a video of John Cena on YouTube where he's talking about snatching, and he's like, you know what it's like? It's like if you're learning how to play golf, but you're doing it lifting weights. Golf is extraordinarily technical. We know this, right? So if you have a guy who's literally one of the best athletes on the planet saying, hey, it's like playing golf but with weights. And then he goes, and it's because it's in your head to move this weight. It's mainly what you are doing intentionally with your technique. And so we'll see things like a snatch or a clean or even a variation of those, and then we'll throw little roadblocks into those movements. Those lead to very technical skills and technical patterns that you have to learn. And
Hmm.
when you learn them, you when the athlete learns them as a coach, because I actually coach people, I can then learn how the person reacts to cues. I can see how they handle criticism or their perception of criticism. I can see how they handle different scenarios. I can see when they're in a good mood. I can see when they're in a bad mood, the way they respond to communication. So now I'm learning how that person operates mentally, and I'm improving myself as a coach. And then the athlete might see this, on the back end to a point, and they're developing themselves mentally. And then the best part is that when we do learn how to go for a heavy lift, or we do learn how to like test a power clean or something, they know that they have to be dialed in with their technique and execute it at high speeds. And then that's a skill that when they go play football, when they're a shot putter, when they go wrestle, they know that if their technique is dialed in and they're very precise with their movement pattern, they're going to win in some advantageous way
Hmm.
because technique rules. And so you can say all you want that I can throw med balls. Go ahead. Also, the other factor is we're not even talking about the transfer of training from snatch or from cleans over to throwing medicine balls. You aren't doing deep work in most cases when you're doing a med ball throws. You're not doing deep work when you're doing a trap bar jump. Those exercises are fine, but we've got to be able to have athletes be more present. And when they're more present and they learn the technique, they learn those motor patterns, they're more intentional, and then they become more intentional in other aspects of their training.
I also think it transfers a lot to where their awareness and their body is in space and time is. Like if
Mm.
we like I've been cleaning and snatching since I was 13. Like that's something that always stayed consistent. When I played rugby, it transferred over because I knew exactly where I was, what was happening. And it again goes like I don't know how much you go into the dark side of training where you want your athletes to experience that really really hard conditioning style work where you don't know when it's going to end. It'll at some point end. You're pushing yourself beyond your what you thought and you're experiencing that dark side. I think Olympic weightlifting kind of preps you for that because you have to experience uncomfortable positions and be really solid. And you're
Would
talking
you
about
say
end rate.
would you say in an acute setting or in a chronic setting, like in the moment or in over a long time frame where it might be like a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, where they're in the they're in the depths of hard training.
Yeah, I feel like it's fluctuation. So I do think that you will have to experience really dark times where you just have to go in and do the training no matter how hard it is. You will also have times where we kind of ease off and padding up a little bit to build that for more later down
Hmm.
the line. The dark side, at least, I like to experience it. So if I'm comfortable, then I'm comfortable giving it to my athlete. Like I won't prescribe anything to my athletes that I've not. So when I'm implement like dark side type training where I'm going to be hard on them, I also know when to be there to help them. Like I'm a big believer that I might not be doing it, but I can help them through it. I can guide them through it so that they can make out the other end.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think it for me the way I would take that is, I mean, I would say, we talk about foundational exercises, right? And I would say, you want to know why most people don't do front squats? It's not because they can't rack the bar. It's not because they know they could do a zombie squat. They
Mhm.
could do a cross arm front squat. You could put straps on the bar. You could even sit there with a safety squat bar on the front. The reason why you don't do a front squat is because you're a freaking baby,
It's
really,
hard.
really hard. Like you've got a weight basically choking you out. And then on
Mhm.
top of that, what we do is we push heavy doubles to heavy sets of 5, right? Like I have a girl who's just turned 13 now, and I've been telling the whole world about her how she's an absolute freak. And last night I said, "Look, I want you to clean and jerk 100 kilos by December." So she's in 7th grade, and I say, "Okay, I want you to clean and jerk 100 kilos. So we need you to front squat a red, a yellow, and a little red for a set of 5. And when you do that, you're going to be able to clean and jerk it." And she's looking at me and she's like, "So what are we doing? What do we?" She knew we had to front squat. This is yesterday. I was like, "So we're gonna do a red, a green, a little red. We're gonna do 90 kilos." And so we did a set of 5. And she's like, "Yeah, that was pretty hard." I was like, "Okay, let's do another set of 5." So she racks it on her fifth rep. Was like she maybe had one more rep after it. She racks it. I was like, "Okay, one more set." She's like, "I've got to do 3 sets of 5." And that's the whole thing. Is like, dude, you learn how when you're 13 years old how to do 3 sets of 5 front
Mhm.
squatting and 90 kilos, and you're a female. Guess what? That's part of the culture. That's part of like you're going to the dark side, and you're learning at a very young age that it's okay to let go and to have the stress and the fear to like go away. And
Mhm.
the more you do that and the more you practice that mentally, then you get into a serious competition when you're 17, 18, 19, 20 years old, and
Yes, yes, yes.
you've been tested, you've been through it, you've been handled, like you've handled the pressure already. You've been dreaming of those moments in your training. And that's where I think a lot of people want to get away from doing front squats, a heavy clean, or learning how to snatch, or, just because it's hard to learn. It's the craziest part about this. Like, let's just put all this away and say, let's say the number one excuse is always it's hard to teach kids like in a big group
Mhm.
setting. Nobody actually dissects the statement and says, we're the whole goal of what we do is to get people in the weight room to do hard things, because when they do a hard task, their body has to adapt. And when their body adapts, they get better. That's literally all we do. That's like the simplest way to put what a strength coach is.
Mhm.
Do hard tasks, get better. There's no other way to put it. And you're a strength coach and you're telling me you don't want to teach this lift because it's hard to teach it to a big group? Dude, you're an idiot. Like, really? You're literally like the total opposite of what our profession is. To me, it's like, I mean, that's just the first step to identifying why people don't use them. But it's an amusing point, because the same
Mhm.
guys that'll post David Goggins quotes and Jocko Willing quotes are the same
Yes.
dudes who are saying, "I don't want to use weightlifting movements because it's too hard to teach a big group." Like, okay, I don't know how that makes sense, but whatever however you can
Mhm.
justify being lazy is fine.
I've got 2 points on that. The first one is how many times has one of our athletes or one of our team went into the strongest team in their league or whatever competition they're at, and they're facing up some of the strongest people. They physically have to still perform at the highest level.
Hmm.
Happens at least 2 or 3 times. If we teach them correctly how to come in and out of the dark zone, like when they get to that competition, they're like, okay, he's here. I'm still going to have to, pardon the French, but go balls to wall
Hmm.
because I'm still wanting to perform my best. So it's kind of teaching them that no matter what's happening they're still like, there's still 80 minutes, there's still 5 lifts, whatever it has to be that they have to endure to come out of that. I, again, going back to that dark side, I believe that that's because no matter what's the game, you have to get it done. Like there's
Yeah.
no other way. Um, and the second is Olympic weightlifting, and this is an argument that I have a lot. You will get to a lot too because you are very Olympic lifting. Coaches tell me all the time they don't have time, but yet they have time to teach an upright row. They have time to teach. They have time to teach a front, and they have time to teach a shoulder press. Guess what's all in there?
Yeah. I think that's I
It's
so
very simplified. It is very simplified.
and I
But
think that the wild part too is like a lot of people will shy away from them, and they might do like a Bosch style lift that is like hard to quantify. That's the other thing with medicine balls, is that it's hard to quantify.
mhm,
And so like one of the factors here is like look, we run a business here on site. We live in the middle of, like, I'm literally looking out in cornfields behind the camera. We live in the middle of nowhere. And for me to justify to people to bring their kids here, we have to show that they're getting better, one in the weight room, and two that it'll transfer over to their sport. If we don't, we're not going to make money.
Mm,
So you can probably do more of that med ball throw. And like, dude, we do med ball throws, but it's not like a foundational lift. It's
mhm.
something else that we put in our
It's
system. And
accessory
like,
work.
yeah. And you could justify using Bosch movements maybe at a high performance center where like you already have a freak. But like, I've got kids, and if I say to a parent like, Johnny's medicine ball throw was 15 feet and it went up 5 inches from the last time. Like, you might see his medicine ball throw go up just from throwing medicine balls, but not getting more explosive. If we show them day one, they're doing a clean with a barbell, and day 180, they're doing a clean 175 pounds, and then day one, their vertical is 24 inches, and day 180, their vertical is 28.5 inches. Like, guess what? The mom and dad are going to be way more willing to do this. Showing and quantifying success in those results, and you'll still see little Johnny's, back overhead medicine ball throw will go from 15 feet to probably 30 feet when he learns how to clean. The other amusing part with all this is that I've no one's asked me, like, no one said, why do you use weightlifting movements? And if I would say, like why do I use them? Dane, why do I use weightlifting movements? Well, there's a breadth of data research that will say fast concentrics drastically leads big time strength gains. Okay, there's no one will dispute this, because if you use a fast concentric movement and you're intense there, everything's there, you will get stronger without a doubt. This is like, it could be a bench press, it could be a pull up, it could be a back squat. Guess what has a fast concentric? Fast concentric, there's no debate. This is
It's factual.
virtually,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, so let's go to the next part. All right, well, if I have a pull, let's just theoretically say I have a pull of a kid who deadlifts 500 pounds. Okay, so I have a kid who deadlifts 500 pounds. I want that kid who can deadlift 500 pounds to move 80% of his 500-pound deadlift at 1.45 meters per second. Show me a power lifter who could do that. Show me a standard lifter who could do that. Meanwhile, I can take a 17-year-old kid who weighs in at 82.5 kilos 4 days ago at an international competition. The kid's deadlifted 500 pounds and he cleaned 183 kilos at 1.45 meters per second. Show me somebody else in any other sport that is not using the weightlifting movements. You're not using weightlifting movements. If you're a deadlifter, challenge, like I'm asking a deadlifter, a power lifter, anybody who uses even trap bars. Find me a guy who could do 80% of their best trap bar deadlift at 1.45 meters per second. You won't find them. Okay, so then what's the third one? Okay, well now, guess what? Here's an easy one. All right, I like front squats. People who use weightlifting movements just front squat a lot. So I
Mhm.
want front squats have a huge correlation to broad jump, to vertical jump, to even, dude, I even think they transfer over to cleans because you just, or to benches, because you learn this global uh neural
Explosivity.
innervation that
Yeah.
happens. Like, you learn how to use your entire body, and I actually think you actually then learn how to use that stimulus on the bench. I want big time front squats, so it makes sense what you just stated. It's like, okay, well, what's in a clean? A deadlift, a front squat, military press, all these things. Right? I know military press isn't in the clean, but you see, it's like, okay, debate with me the fast concentric. You can't debate it. Debate with me the fast pull at 80%. You won't find it. And then I want big time front squats. Show me who front squats more, than weightlifters, than our
Yeah.
throwers, than, and it's like, this discussion doesn't even need to go towards, any other area, because that right there is enough for me to be like, well, I can see it in my athletes. I can see it in my high school football guys.
I mean, let's take a look at the Chinese for the Olympic weightlifting. That's scary how much their fronts. It's
Yeah,
scary how much their like back extensions, just their like snatch grip deadlift, like what they're pulling from that floor at
insane.
speed. It's speed. It's not like they've got like 200K in the bar and their
Uh-huh.
speed deadlift insane. Like I'm a big fan of the ATG Instagram. When a coach is asking me about like Olympic movement specifics, I just send them to that page.
Yeah, yeah.
You're not hip thrusting the bar. like that bar stays, you're snapping under. Like I
Yeah.
want, and I think this is something that again I kind of want to pick your brain on, and it's how important is that snap under? Because like often talk, like we talk about all the concentrics, but we don't talk about that drop under.
So I think this is another funny one, and I don't include this in my rant on the three reasons why I use it. But if I look at, okay, first let's just say slack. Let's say slack is something, all Bosch. Even though I like some of what he does, Franz Bosch, some of his stuff just drives me nuts because people will like hang on it and be
Hmm.
like, this is the system I have to use, and they'll talk about slack. Well, the ironic part to me is if I can teach a kid who's 13 how to drop under the bar, I think there's a point of slack after they finish the lift that this is happening, and then they have to like reuse that immediately. I think the other thing is like I like to look at if I have athletes come to my gym here and I've got normal kids. These are kids that are, maybe they start varsity in high school, right? Like they're not freaks of anything. I need to throw everything at them that will make them the absolute best they can be. So instead of being a non collegiate athlete, now they go D3. Or instead of being a D3 athlete, they go D2. And I want to make sure that everything I'm giving them gets them to this next step. And that's where we go with those tests. And to go into your question about changing the direction, kids that start to learn how to weightlift, you'll see the kids that struggle with changing their level quickly are the same kids that when they do a counter movement, they like dance their feet. Or
Mm.
when they land off of a hurdle hop or a box, they sort of dance and jump back up. They really, really struggle with changing their hip level. And then you look at it, and I've had direct conversations with our wrestlers that have won state championships, and we're in Pennsylvania. We're the best state in the U.S. for wrestling. We've had All Americans. We've trained over 7 different All Americans.
Oh, nickel,
Yeah,
unreal.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So you're looking at this and you go, everybody knows for wrestling, it's change your
Hmm.
levels, change your
Hmm.
level, change your level. It's basically counter movement attack, counter movement attack, defense, counter movement. It's all of these changing your level constantly. And that's the big thing that you see when they learn how to do a snatch or a clean effectively. They see that change of levels. They learn how to use their hips with flexion, extension, flexion, extension, flexion. And then on on top of this, if we looked at like a power lifter, a lot of power lifters, when they first start to weightlift, start to do weightlifting movements, they really struggle with flexion happening on the catch. And they sort of dance and they'll do power cleans where they catch like extended, they land in really funky positions because they're used to staying put and just doing something very heavy. That's why they're stupid strong. They're like insanely strong. But when they learn how to be more dynamic, it's from that changing of the level rapid. It's from that hip forward, hip back, hip forward, hip back. And I even argue like when you learn, so the way we teach our sports performance athletes, we teach them how to do no feet lifts. So what was crazy is yesterday we had 3 kids. So we had a freshman clean 132 kilos. We had a senior that cleaned 138 kilos. And then we had another senior clean 160 kilos. This is yesterday. And if you look at their technique, they all move. So we teach with this no feet movement. The feet are grounded the entire time. And I
Mm.
believe that when you teach them the no foot, so they can still plantar flex, but they essentially plantar flex and then they might slide ever so slightly. Now they learn the ground contact. They have better ground contact on the pole, which means they have better connection. But then on top of that, they also learn how to apply force for a long period into the ground. And this helps them then with their jumping and with their running. And it also transfers to them having better awareness, spatial awareness, as you mentioned earlier, with from that ground contact of having that no feet pull.
That's super interesting. Something that arcs me in people Olympic weightlifting, especially when we're talking more like CrossFit style, where they jump
Yeah.
to then come under. The amount of energy and time that you've spent doing that could be that time that you could snap under more efficient,
Or
and
pull
then
longer.
or pull longer as well.
Yeah.
Um, Another thing. So I've had Tim Schuschamel and Paul Comfort on the podcast, and they're big into the research on Olympic weightlifting and its applicability to
Who was the first one?
Tim Schuschamel.
Oh, okay. I thought you said Tim Swords. I don't know. That's what I thought
No.
you said, but okay.
Um, and they've sort of come up with this pool theory. So from the shrug, no one really works on the explosive dynamic of that. So they're kind of doing research into how that the athletic again Olympic weightlifting is a very we'll just call it so it's like it's not just the what I'm trying to say is like every breaking like if we break a lift down, every part of it becomes so integral a performance. So it's not just like the whole act, but even if we do each movement, still has a great transfer over. I mean, I've always done it, so
So you're saying like the partial, even like a partial movement is still going to transfer.
yes, if we do it explosively and like to the same intent. Again,
Yeah.
I'm a big believer of if we're going to, you could be having a terrible day, but I want you to put as much intent.
Yeah,
Like,
I think to go further off of that, one thing that we'll do is to sort of to be the echo chamber to what you're saying is like we'll put in, you know, we do a lot of stuff off of boxes. So
mhm,
we'll put a one box or two box. And if we think about
yeah,
yeah, and one I think that when you're dealing with football players, you can increase your volume with cleans by doing a one box or a two box because you can protect their back because they might be getting hit a lot at practice or something. But then when you decrease the range of motion, it helps with their back a little bit. On that statement, the decrease in range of motion. So I think the most important aspect, the most important measurement is actually known as impulse. And so if you think
mhm,
about um, time, time is in the pull. If you think about a full pull, time is the measurement, which is actually in a clean would be the distance. So
yeah,
you have a finite time on a pull. Okay. So if we think about if I have a full lift and I'm pulling at let's just throw up a number like 60 centimeters, right? But then I go to a one box and I pull at 50 centimeters. For me to have the same impulse, I have to uh, I will have to exert more force in that time frame. Okay, so now I have to have
mhm,
a
mhm,
higher force. It has to happen faster. So my rate of force development goes up because my impulse goes up. And so I have to apply. So I might have a one box or a two box, these partial lifts that you're talking about. And if we train our athletes to prioritize those positions as well, or a hang, or you know, a low hang or a high hang, now their impulse increases on that because the distance is decreasing. So they have a faster rate of force development. And that's what else is funny with like the anti weightlifting crowd for weight for snatch or for sports performance is like they will talk about partial movements from a you know like let's say a heavy squat off of pins or something like that, and those are dude those are fine. I don't disagree on that, those lifts are good, but they'll use this example of rate of force development as trained when you're doing that.
mhm,
But then, and they'll talk about something like the concept of dynamic correspondence because they read, you know, I'm trying to look for my book right now behind me. They read super training. So now they think they're smart because they read super training and they talked about dynamic correspondence. And they see, like, oh, well, the rate, the speed, or the angle, the joint angle, and, you know, rate of force development is going up. But then they don't through like, well, why not do that? Like, why not also do that with like a barbell on a pull? Why not do a clean from a partial? And you're still going to see rate of force development go up. And guess what? That's a component of impulse. So that's where it's like, there's so many delusional arguments that can just be like punch a hole in. And it's like, I still think a lot of it comes back to like a lot of these coaches just don't work with a normal kid.
mhm.
And you get normal Joe to do a clean at 225 and he goes against normal Joe number 2 who doesn't do a clean at 225. Normal Joe number 1 is going to curb normal Joe number 2. Like that's just the way it works. Like I've seen it over and over again. Like that's what is so frustrating with the whole debate.
See, I understand completely what you're saying. This whole thing with the trap bar is if we think biomechanically, technically it's not a deadlift. If we're looking at body positions and where they're coming from,
Yeah. Would you
it's
call a squat?
um. But even so, people are like, "Oh, you can still get triple extension." Can you though? Because if we go in proper triple when we're sort of going this way, you kind of need to do for snapping under that bar. The bar would come with you because you're attached to that.
So you
So
almost
that
might fall backwards a little.
exactly. So that
Hmm.
way will transfer back, you fall back. So you can't because of the way that the weight. So like I like again trap bar jumps. Okay, I can support them. I get it. Like it's not something I use a lot of. But if an athlete can't do barbell jumps, dumbbell jumps for some whatever reason, can get them into a trap bar. But I'm going to prioritize that movement and explosivity movements that I know works.
I think this brings up an interesting point around movement. Like, so you'll hear like movement vocabulary or kinesthetic awareness, these terms,
Mm,
these like buzzy terms, right? So movement vocabulary would be I'm proficient at many different movement patterns, therefore I will likely be less prone to injury, therefore I could theoretically be a better athlete. If that's the argument, and I have a individual who can clean 300 pounds at the age of 15, okay, and they do a full clean at 300 pounds at 15 years old, and you put 135 pounds on a trap bar, and they've never done a trap bar, and they do a trap bar jump with 160 kilos, right? They do a trap bar jump at 1.2 meters, whatever the number is that somebody's hitting. The clean has taught them how to do this. This is where the transfer is. But if we take that same person, they can't do the clean at 300 pounds. They may not even be able to clean. And so, if we want to use kinesthetic awareness or movement vocabulary, the transfer over is not
mm,
there. So, why is that okay to stunt this individual in the system? I would just ask that question: is why is that actually okay? And I think that that's um, where I struggle with the whole discussion, because I think a lot of people believe that you can't do speed based work and weightlifting exercises. You can't do jumping and weightlifting exercises. You can't get stronger. And I'm sitting here, I'm going, dude, we train a lot of throwers, a lot of discus throwers, a lot of shot putters. Everybody knows that throwers are the like most explosive athletes on the planet. Like literally everybody knows that. Outside of a gymnast
mm,
and weightlifters, ironically, in this discussion, shot putters, discus throwers, hammer throwers, javelin throwers, they are the freakiest of freaks. Big, huge, hulking individuals that are explosive. It's like, guys, we've got 300-pound guys that have 35-inch verts, and
mm.
they can still do jumps. They do jumps a lot. They do sprint work. They do weightlifting exercises. You can do all of it together if you have a brain with programming and you're actually a strength coach. And I think that that's like where people miss, is it's like they'll think you can't run sprints and still have weightlifting in your system for some reason, or
100%.
plyometrics.
Again, I have a great deal of beef. The textbooks we use at university and the research papers are now coming out. Most of it isn't written by real strength coaches, so they're looking at ideal situations. If we simplify it right down to the research papers, unless you've got like some high level like Coach Creamer or sorry William Creamer, Paul Comfort, who have applicable knowledge to the field, you're looking at averages from average.
Mhm.
Controlled every variable possible. They've
Yeah.
controlled the people, they've most of the unstable elements that we see in so are we truly getting that real life applicable to what we do as a coach? Not really. Because
Yeah. I almost think that would be, I would take that and say, I want a study that would be very controlled if I'm looking at a very specific, like, let's
case.
say,
Yeah.
yeah, like is a pre-exhaustion program, let's using, is a potentiation setup really better than a non-potentiation setup, and everything's controlled for 12 weeks or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's that's okay to do that. But when you're looking at like 40 times in week 7 of a high school football season, dude, you can't control shit. Like you literally can't control
Mm-hmm.
any of that. And it becomes like that's where I see exactly what you're saying, because you sit there and you're like, what is that shit gonna do for me? I get you can't see, they're out of
I've got a
the
bunch of them.
yeah. So like I get the journals, and when I get the new journals that come in, but when they come in, like I go through them. I'll highlight them. I try to read every single one's abstract, and then if I read an abstract that I'm like, oh shit, this is pretty interesting, then I want to read the whole study. And I think that it's important for us to stay up on that.
Mm-hmm.
But you are right. You're right, where it's like you end up reading some of them. You're like, what are you gonna do with this?
Yeah.
Like, what does this even mean? It means jack shit right now. Like, it doesn't mean anything.
Like I say all this, but like my iPad is full of research papers. Like
Yeah,
I
yeah.
read a lot, but then the meathead strength coach in me, I'm just like, okay, but like,
For me, it's like,
so what? That's the thing that I apply to a lot of things. Like I ask myself, so what? I've read this incredible paper. It tells me all about the calcium pump, how it's needed for muscle contractions and energy systems and whatever else. But like, well, so what? Can I apply that to my 12-year-old? And the thing is, like, it's great that we tap into this, but again, I I've been thankful enough to read as coaching was in this industry. It taught me a lot about taking care of the people that's in, and then I've as a mentor for life, and he cares truly about his, and I've had to sit, like, I've sat down with some of the greatest coaches and just talk shop with them. And like, one thing that's common between all of us, yes, we get the science, yes, we understand it, but let me check in with my guy. Let me see how he's doing. Let me see if having house troubles, homework trouble. That to me is the true value of being an effective. Do you care for your athletes? Like, are you able to make them not just great athletes? Because again, that's our mission. Are you also building? I know the war in garage strength is a little bit different, and all athletes are on the at the top of their shit. And I want to buy some bottles of that water. I got we'll speak about that at the end. Hey, if you look through your Instagram, that well is spelled. But like, everyone sort of agrees that no matter what the cat or what road we're taking to Rome or what tools we have in the tool, we all agree on that one principle. Let's check in with our athlete. Let's make it speak for them. Let's just give them what they need. Fill whatever buckets. Let's make it fucking. How many athletes have you coached that didn't make it? How many have I coached that didn't make it? They still need to have a life afterward. So what can we do to impact? Mine's is Lego. I'm obsessed with Lego. I don't know if you. Yeah, I try. But across there, I got. Yeah, yeah. So I'm a big architect. So like, I've got a bunch of them. Not in this office. Yeah, like, Lego's my shit. I get excited. I get hyped. But like, even as coaches, like, we need to have that also escape, because like, don't know how your works obviously, but like, I spend so much time coming up with these concepts and new ways of integrating training models and whatnot, that like, I sometimes just need a complete escape from, and just like, for 2-3 hours, all I'm doing is.
running the company, running the business can
Mm,
be a more so of that mechanical, not, it's, it's not the same, but it's a thoughtful strategic approach that I do find enjoyment in some cases. And I think you're right. I think it's important for everyone to have that outlet of something slightly different from your profession.
100%. I kind of want to go back to some of the goal setting. Again, I always get my athlete, but then at the back of it, I have some goals for them, and that could be something from as little as like, okay, we want to move your squat, whatever squat pattern they prefer, to X amount of weight, or I want to see you increase. You've told me you want to increase your time by 1 second, but that's actually my goal for you, is increase 125. Like, how important is that for you? You kind of touched on setting goals for your athlete. I kind of, as soon as you said, I was like,
So I think it's important, and the way that we look at it is we'll say, okay, if you test, so when I explain this in the beginning, when we have those assessments, right? So you have these tests, and then the results come back, and then we essentially set you up, and you're like level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. Think about level 4 as somebody who's a professional athlete. Level 3 would be somebody is a collegiate Division 1 athlete. Level 2 would be like you're starting varsity essentially.
mm-hmm,
Um, Level 1 would be maybe you're a junior high athlete or you're a junior varsity athlete and you're trying to get to level 2. So when we do those tests, we can see based off of the results, like how far someone might be in certain lifts, how far off they might be from getting to the next level. And I think it's important for us to communicate what are sort of like benchmarks along the way to keep athletes in training. And so we might look at in poundage, I might say, okay, if you can bench 135, then the next benchmark is 185, then it's 205, then it's 225, then it's 250, then it's 275, then it's 300. And you have these benchmarks that you pull through, and then you have these milestone markers, and the milestone markers are where you get to the next level. And so I think that if and those levels are established based off of our experience and athletes that we've trained that have been at these levels and what we've seen as consistent from our years of testing. So I think when you're looking at goals, there's like the inter training goal. So it's like, you know, Ryan McDonald, who's a weightlifter that I train, who just got second at Junior Pan Ams, he knows that if he back squats 265, probably going to clean 205 to 210, and he's probably going to snatch 155 to 160. So he knows deep down inside, I'm trying to push him to a 260 to 270 back squat. So there's that big picture goal. But right now, he's a 227 back squatter. So the next step is to get him to 240. Well, how can we do that? And then it's like, okay, now we're gonna have these things laid out. I think for us, I like to see the athletes come to me with their goals, and then I provide
Mhm.
what feedback is. And I think when the athlete starts to bring their goals, that's when they're stepping into like, now I'm starting to take on more and more accountability. And that's usually, you know, usually around for us, that would be around 14, 15 years old, is like, that's sort of us getting
Mhm.
them to be more accountable. And I think that that's an important aspect too, is like, dude, going back to it, I think the coaches that complain the most about younger kids tend to be the coaches who don't use weightlifting movements, and they don't have goal setting involved. Uh, so then they'll say like kids don't want to train. And it's like, no, dude, you just suck at communicating with
Mhm.
kids. You're not good at coaching their technique, and you're not good at asking them what are their goals, what do they want to be, you know, how far do they want to go. And then on top of that, when they give you a response, dude, it's okay to be like, you're gonna like, I say this all the time. It's okay for me to believe in the athlete more than the athlete believes in themselves.
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
okay for me to have a slightly different goal for a kid who's 14, 15, 16, because they're not mature enough. They don't have perspective yet. And I'm not saying I control them and like brainwash them. Sometimes I might. I don't entirely do that. Um, but when you have a kid who's clearly capable of something,
Mhm.
and they give you a goal that's like here, and you know that their goal could be here, it's okay to change the goal to here and be like, yo, dude, you're way more gifted than you realize, or you're way more capable than you realize. So I think the goal setting aspect is something that you have to consistently do. And it could even be as simple as like, yo, guys, you haven't written your notes inside of your workout, inside of your program. Goal number one, write your freaking notes at the
Mhm.
end of your workout into your program. Goal number two, do mobility. You know, there's those little wins on a daily basis, but then there's the big wins also that are, and all of these things are part of the journey.
And I think again, accountability is the biggest thing. Like when you can teach your athletes to take ownership, because like again, like I've been fortunate enough to work with athletes that are now in the NFL and they're British and Scottish champions. Like when they message me and they're like, "Hey, coach, appreciate you. This is what I've been doing." And this is how far I've gotten. You did that. Fuck all to do with me. Like I've supported and made that plan and like I helped performance, but like you walked in to the door, you did those reps, you did those sets, you spent time, you took care of your body outside of it too. Recovery doesn't happen in the gym. So like you did it. I merely supported. Like I was just there. I was like cool. And I think that perspective is like what a lot of coaches are missing. Like no, I did that. And I'm
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
like for me, it's again, I'm in this industry and have been. I had a great influence as a coach who helped me push, who helped me get to the stages I got. So like for me, I'm trying to build that foundation as well. Like I'm, it's not about me care about success. What makes me successful is knowing that you learned all these things and you were able to apply in your.
Yeah, I think you're 100% on point. Absolutely.
There was also like I know you deal with a lot of athletic. Those are some of the freakiest of. You can give a sprinter or a thrower anything, got it,
Mm-hmm.
and they'll fucking do it. I love
Yep.
it.
Yep.
I've got a sprinter, and I've coached him since he was. We were both 18. That's when I really and I've been coaching him since then. I'm now 29. And I could throw the kitchen sink at that boy, and he's just like, "Let's go."
Let's go. Yeah. Yeah. I think that goes back to their sport too. Is like they're doing so much volume. Dude, it's like that with swimmers. It's like that with CrossFitters actually. Like, dude, you can literally look at a CrossFitter who's training for the sport in the proper means of how you would trip for a CrossFit comp, and they can handle volume unbelievable amount. And you see that quite a bit with throwers and with, yeah, especially for big throwers, like bigger throwers, for them to handle the volume that they handle. relative to like someone who might be like an American football player. They can't handle nearly as much volume, and I think it's because of the repetitive nature of the
Mhm.
sport. You'll see that transfer really well to their overall ability to adapt well.
Yeah, I was going. I've got a question. So I've been talking, and this is kind of relating to athletics, swimming, and some of the, I'll call them like end range movements, right, where you're really having to uncomfortable. What's your take on end range control? Is that something that you spend a lot of time on for your athlete?
How would you define end range control?
So being strong, the end of that ROM. So say it's a shoulder, being comfortable with load, heavy shit at this end. Or if we're in like swimmers, they have to reach out, like extend as far as possible to pull through. Or
So all of our swimmers do dead hang pull-ups. All of our
mm,
swimmers will do like let's say like a Y on the incline or something like that. But they do a lot of dead hang pull-ups. They'll do an exercise that we call miracle grow. So they've got their arms back overhead, they come back over. Um, we do a lot of that. I wouldn't say that I'm writing my program thinking about
mm,
the end range strength. I would say I'm more so just thinking like, okay, I like to use the dead hang high ring pull-ups because I know that they can get more range of motion at the top and more range of motion or more range of motion at the bottom and more range of motion at the top of the pull. Um, I'm thinking more along those lines than I am actually like the specific end range, but I mean it would be in there in the sense that like the reason why I'm choosing that is because of the position, and I know that if they can be stronger with a longer range of motion, that we should in theory uh see a higher impulse in the water even. So um I think it's a priority, but I haven't really thought of it in that way.
I've had recently a gymnastics, funnily enough, an S&C coach that did, and obviously they're exploring the hand ranges really. So for her, it was like most of their injuries come from having weak end ranges. So I've actually been spending a lot of time coaching them and strengthening up those end ranges. And not like dance isn't known for the rest. Having that sort of perspective, like that's gotten me like into this new cycle of like I've went down this rabbit hole exploring like how important is that and how transferable is it for most. There will be at some point, like I saw the other day this beautiful example of a soccer athlete kicking a ball. Now she was planted, but she had to hyperextend her back and legs, so she was kind of like in a banana shape. So how can we get that again transfer rotational to be as strong as possible at end ranges to still be able to.
Yeah, that's a tough one because it's like how much of that is mobility of the
Mm,
individual, how much of it is their technique and like what they're doing in training as field for soccer, and then how much of that would be directly from what we're doing in the gym. And I think there would be for sure a carryover, but I
mhm,
also think I would argue that I would want them to do more precise mobility work as well, and I would try to see that carry over as much as I as much as possible. Truly, that's why I was just trying to think through that.
yeah.
I know like we do enough in those end range positions that
Mhm,
like I wouldn't be of concern.
yeah.
I know that sounds sort of arrogant, but like
That's
that's why
confidence.
I want them to do more mobility stuff. Really,
No, because again, I spend a lot of time. That most recent rabbit hole I'm going down is you speak about meters per second in movement. So I'm guessing you use some type of VBT or you analyze a certain movement
I've
speed.
used it enough that I'm pretty familiar with it. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like a lot of conditioning isn't under load constraint. Would you agree?
Say it again.
So most conditioning that we do isn't under external load condition. So there's no like actual physical weight being applied to conditioning.
And you're defining conditioning as like aerobic, like
Yeah. Aerobic capacity. Yeah.
correct. Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
internal load. Um
Okay.
So I've been thinking about like with VBT, you've also got like that added element of movements. So a lot of sports don't happen or in the same pace, or even if you're like sprinting, it's a max effort. But how can we start introducing some sort of external load, and then how would VBT be able to inform us on that? Again, back squats and front squats are amazing because you can load them 80% of their max RP one RM, sorry. Check their movements, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So then we can do 5 sets. Let's see how fast you can do them. Next week, can we do them faster? The week after, can we do them faster? And that's still given that load while still like you're giving them like to 30 seconds. That speed is going to go down. So yeah, that's the most recent thing I've been exploring.
I think the thing that so I guess my question would be: are you asking this more around conditioning, or is it more just around VBT? And I think the downfall of something like VBT is it still doesn't change much of what I'm doing.
Hmm.
Um, I think sometimes if I have an athlete missing a lift and I see the speed, I just scream at them about their technique. And then when you were saying the part about conditioning, I started to think about speed, and I do think that's where you could theoretically argue like a 1080 comes into play, that you
Hmm.
can see a pretty precise, very precise measurement. Um, but again, like the VBT and the 1080 are so they're so I think in the world of strength and conditioning, we get stuck in this mindset that we have to have those tools to be really good, to be
Yeah.
considered legit, to get legit athletes. And it's not the case. It's not. It's like I think we should be proposing and promoting
Mm.
successful systems
Efficiency.
that don't have those tools. Because then when you bring in a VBT tool or you bring in a 1080, it's like just it's an immediate jump and the system just gets better. But it's not necessarily that you have to have that tool for the
Mm.
system to be good. And I think that that's where like one thing in the realm of strength and conditioning, dude, I started in a 400 square foot garage, like my parents' house. Like that's literally what we started from. And we got one state qualifier, and then we got one state medalist, and then we got one state place winner or state champ, and it just snowballed from there. And it's like I didn't understand anything about VBT, and I had already coached a guy who was an NCAA champ. So it's like,
Yep.
dude, did I need that to be that, to be successful? Not really. Um, no, it's still fun to play around with,
Yeah.
but I
I
think that,
completely agree with you. I agree with
yeah,
you. It's just
I,
like theoretically, I love to explore these space.
yeah, yeah, and I also am in this. I can be the very, very much the same because dude, we have a 1080. My wife didn't want us to get one, but I was like, oh, come on, we can just play around with it and see all this stuff. And there's clearly like a lot of utility that you can use it for, but you can also just go run hills and you'll be fine as a high school. And I think that that's
Yeah.
important to acknowledge as well.
I agree. Like, and again, in Europe, where I'm from, it is a lot more about like you're doomed if you don't have the in your pro. So
Yeah.
like again, show me a kid that hinges, pushes, pulls vertically, horizontal all day long. I will be there for.
Uh huh.
But I also like to explore what else I can. Like those are my fundamentals. I want movement, quality, and efficient. Like
Yep.
I always have this debate with people on conjugate, and it's like, okay, my 12-year-old isn't going to use chains on a bike. Teach them to move forward, and then we can explore. And so I
Right.
completely agree with you. No, that's perfect. Thank you so much for coming on, Dane.
Yeah. Yeah. No problem.
If you let everyone know where they can find you, you've mentioned your YouTube a couple times, and I will say that's how I introduced to you. You weren't as jacked as possible, like you are now, so that
Yeah, I
gives
don't
us
know.
an
I feel
indication of how
I
far.
turn 41 tomorrow, so I feel a little sloppy right now.
I
Um,
you're shredded.
yeah, so our YouTube channel's Garage Strength, GRAGE Strength, and then there it is right there. Oh, you can see what was that? Oh, did you had a tool up on there, didn't you?
Yeah, yeah.
I was
I'll
trying
show
to
you afterwards. I'll show you afterwards.
Okay. And then on Instagram, at Garage Strength, my personal one is Ghostface D Miller, what you see right there. And then our strength training app is known as Peak Strength. So you can download it at peakstrength.app. You can get it from the Google Play Store or the Apple iOS store. Um, and that's where you can have like sports specific goals, or you can even just have a goal based off of muscle or more strength or more endurance, and you'll get a program that we've built, and it'll be uh, sort of like an algorithmically fed program from what we use here. And I am in the process of writing a book, so um, I signed with a publisher, and if you follow any of those channels, you'll see soon that we're going to have a waitlist sign up so that you can get more updates about the release of the book.
You also have two other reasons I highly recommend, and that your book is something else that I would love to have you back on, break it down, and go through that as well if you'd be interested.
Yeah, 100%.
Thank you so much, Dane.
Thanks for having me. I'll see you. Peace.